Hello everyone, today I want to talk to you about a new move China has made, this time targeting large lithium batteries. On the other hand, as soon as the US stock market takes a hit, Trump backs down. He talks about raising tariffs on China, but then softens his stance. Will this kind of take-o backpedaling deal happen again? The confrontation between China and the US is heating up rapidly. US President Trump has declared that he will impose a 100% tariff on China and implement export controls on all critical software. China's Ministry of Commerce responded to the US action through a spokesperson answering reporters' questions. The spokesperson for the Ministry of Commerce said that China has taken note of the situation. On October 9th, China announced export control measures on rare earths and related items. This is a normal action by the Chinese government to improve its export control system in accordance with laws and regulations. The US's statements are a typical example of double standards. For a long time, the US has violated the law and abused export controls under the pretext of national security, adopting discriminatory practices against China and imposing unilateral and forceful jurisdictional measures on numerous products such as semiconductor equipment and chips. The US control list includes more than 3,000 items, while China's export control list contains only a little over 900 items. The US has long imposed arbitrary export controls, including rules on the minimum content of US-made components in products. Even if the percentage is as low as 0, they still seek to control it. These US measures have seriously harmed the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese companies, severely disrupted the international economic and trade order, and gravely undermined the security and stability of global industrial and supply chains. Especially after the China-US economic and trade talks in Madrid in September, in just over 20 days, the US has continued to introduce a series of restrictive measures against China, including, first, adding multiple Chinese entities to the export control entity list and the specially designated nationals list. Second, by implementing penetrating rules, the US has arbitrarily expanded the scope of regulated companies, affecting thousands of Chinese enterprises. Third, disregarding China's concerns and goodwill, the US insists on implementing Section 301 measures against China's maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding industries. The actions of the US have seriously harmed China's interest and severely undermined the atmosphere of the bilateral economic and trade talks. China firmly opposes this. After watching the response from China's Ministry of Commerce, he listed the actions the US took against China first. If the US insists on imposing a 100% tariff on China starting November 1st, it seems inevitable that China will retaliate with tariffs on the US. A careful analysis of Trump's remarks about imposing tariffs on China that day reveals that he was quite arbitrary. Just a few hours after the Nobel Prize Committee announced that he was not the recipient of the Peace Prize, he shifted the focus to China, posting a lengthy message of nearly 1,000 words saying he would impose tariffs on China. In his post, he expressed surprise at China's actions, believing that China was unilaterally targeting the United States. He made several points. First, he said China had suddenly become He said some very strange things are happening in China. China has become extremely hostile and has sent letters to countries around the world, stating that it will impose export controls on the production of rare earths and various elements, even including products that are not manufactured in China. No one has ever seen anything like this before, but this would essentially clog up the global market, making it difficult for any country in the world to survive, especially targeting China. We have already been contacted by other extremely angry countries because of this unprecedented act of trade hostility. Our relationship with China has been quite good over the past 6 months, which makes this action all the more abrupt and surprising. Second, China is deliberately targeting the United States. Trump said, "I've always felt that China was secretly biding its time. Now it seems that, once again, my usual intuition has proven to be correct. We absolutely will not allow China to hold the world hostage. But it seems they have been planning this for a long time, quietly establishing a kind of monopoly, starting from magnets to other elements. This kind of move is quite dangerous and full of hostility. But the United States also has monopolistic advantages, and they are even stronger and more extensive. I just never chose to use them because there was never a need to, until now. Third, I will no longer meet with President Xi." Trump said that China sent a letter several pages long, detailing every element they wanted to purchase from other countries. Things that used to be ordinary for them have now become unusual. I haven't spoken with President Xi yet because there's no need to do so anymore. This was truly unexpected. Not only did it shock me, but it also caught all the leaders of the free world off guard. I had originally planned to meet with Xi Jinping at the APEC summit in South Korea 2 weeks from now, but at this point, it seems there's no reason to go ahead with it. Although the process is painful, it will ultimately be a good thing for the United States. One of the policies we are evaluating is a significant increase in tariffs on imports from China. Many other countermeasures are also being seriously considered. Later, he proposed to start imposing a 100% tariff on Chinese goods beginning November 1st. Analyzing Trump's post, it portrays China as unilaterally taking hostile actions, while the United States appears to be a surprised victim. However, the response from China's Ministry of Commerce has made it clear that it was the US that, in the short span of just over 20 days since the Madrid economic and trade talks, has continued to introduce a series of restrictive measures against China, prompting China to take action. Does Trump really not know that the US is taking these actions against China, or does he think it's fine for him to target others, but not okay for others to target him? But even Trump's own stance is quite erratic. After he posted, US stocks plummeted, with the Nasdaq ultimately dropping 3.5% and the combined market value of the 7 major US tech giants evaporating by $77 billion in a single day. Trump seemed a bit flustered. A few hours later, when he met with reporters at the White House, he was asked whether he would cancel his meeting with President Xi Jinping and whether he would definitely impose tariffs on China. Trump said, "I might still meet with Xi Jinping, but I don't know if I have to." He suddenly introduced these new export control measures, and I set the date for imposing tariffs on November 1st. By then, the situation might change. And November 1st is the day Trump was originally scheduled to meet with President Xi. He first posted that he would no longer meet with President Xi, but later, when speaking to reporters, he said the meeting was still possible and hinted at setting the tariff date on the originally scheduled meeting day. In other words, if an agreement is reached, they will meet and there will be no tariffs. If not, then tariffs will be imposed. Trump also left himself some room to maneuver. After Trump softened his stance, some people in the US market said this was a taco trading opportunity. Taco stands for Trump always chickens out. In other words, they're betting that even though Trump says he'll impose 100% tariffs on China this time, he will ultimately back down. In fact, after China played a few of its cards, the US doesn't have much leverage left to go head-to-head with China. Otherwise, the production of a large number of American tech products would come to a halt. On October 11th, Bloomberg published a commentary stating that China's export controls on high-end lithium-ion batteries are also seen as a trump card against the United States. China's export restrictions on certain lithium-ion batteries and related materials will take effect next month. Given China's dominance in the battery industry and the surging demand for battery energy storage in the US, this move could have a significant impact on American companies. China announced that starting from November 8th this year, it will impose export controls on certain key cathode and anode materials for lithium batteries, as well as their manufacturing equipment and technology, in order to safeguard national security and fulfill its international non-proliferation obligations. The Bloomberg article bluntly stated that China previously used rare earths as a tool in its trade game with the United States. Now, as the US increasingly needs energy storage devices to support data center operations and stabilize the power grid, it has become heavily dependent on large batteries from China. China has found another bargaining chip it can use in trade negotiations. The Chinese measures cover a wide range of areas in the battery supply chain, including large lithium-ion batteries for energy storage, as well as cathode and anode materials and battery manufacturing equipment, fields in which China holds a strong technological lead. As with previous restrictions, the new rules require battery companies to obtain a license from the Chinese Ministry of Commerce before exporting their products. This system allows China to selectively use exports as a weapon. Bloomberg analyst Keys, who specializes in trade and supply chains, said that although this does not affect as broad an industry as some of China's other export controls, China's dominance in the battery supply chain means they can exert significant pressure. American companies will soon feel the impact. According to the latest data from Bloomberg, in the first 7 months of this year, grid-scale lithium-ion batteries from China accounted for about 65% of US imports. Analysts say that these grid-scale batteries will be the first to bear the brunt of China's new regulatory measures. With the rapid development of artificial intelligence driving a surge in energy demand, battery energy storage has become crucial for the United States. A report from the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory in the United States shows that from 2017 to 2023, electricity consumption by US data centers more than doubled. The report states that by 2028, this figure is expected to more than triple from the original amount. Kirk Christ, director of the Energy, Economics, and Security Program at the Center for a New American Security, said that while China's AI development is limited by its access to advanced US chips, energy demand is also a constraining factor for the infrastructure of US AI data centers. Large batteries help store excess renewable energy and release it when electricity is needed, which helps prevent blackouts and enhances the stability of the power grid. 10 years ago, the installed capacity of utility-scale batteries in the United States was almost zero, but by 2024, it has reached 26 gigawatts. In Texas alone, about 4 gigawatts of battery capacity were put into use last year, enough to supply electricity to 3 million households. According to Bloomberg New Energy, within just another decade, the United States will add as much as 136 gigawatts of battery capacity nationwide. Kuya said that most of this needs to come from China, and it is difficult for other countries to replace it. In recent years, the battery manufacturing capacity in the United States has increased, but it still cannot meet the domestic demand for energy storage. Moreover, American factories will also be affected by China's new restrictive measures. According to Bloomberg, China controls about 90% of the world's anode material production capacity and 85% of the cathode material production capacity. Fumos, a researcher at a strategy consulting firm, said that China, including these key components under export controls, is a major escalation, because companies outside China are highly dependent on them. After China announced these measures, the stock price of US battery company Fluence Energy plummeted by 12% on October 10th, marking the largest single-day drop in 3 months. Shares of automaker Tesla also fell by 5%. Both companies are highly reliant on battery components from China. In summary, China will no longer allow the US to block its imports of chips and lithography machines. Instead, China will also restrict the supply of rare earths and batteries to the US. China and the United States are deeply intertwined and interdependent. China will no longer silently endure unilateral sanctions and embargoes from the United States.